Hi, I'm Chris Gardy. I'm a Senior Program Manager for Office Integration and Dynamics AX, also in the Common Data Model. I work out of Fargo. So we're going to be talking today about Dynamics AX and Office Integration, and with Office 365. So I'm interested in who we have in the room. So who here are customers? And partners? Okay, consultants? Microsoft employees? Okay. And then currently using AX 2009? Okay, and 2012? Okay, and then thinking about moving to AX 7? Okay, okay, nice. Okay, great. A smattering of all of those. The clicker is misbehaving on me. Oh, it's just slow. All right, so today we're going to run through a number of things. I'll provide kind of an introduction into how we look at Office integration and some of the key things that the Office integration components in Dynamics AX build on top of, being like authentication and entities, things like that. We'll run through some of the Excel integration, so export to Excel and then open in Excel. We'll talk about open in Excel quite a bit. And then into Word, so the idea of designing up ad hoc reports in Word, and then talk a little bit about document management, some of our email integration, and then we'll talk about some stuff that we've recently completed, including our feed control. Great. Okay. Oh, there we go. So what we're looking to do, sorry. The clicker doesn't like me. Okay. It's just going to go away. So what we're looking to do is empower every person on the planet. We're looking to create more personal computing with Dynamics AX and reinvent productivity and business processes and build the intelligent cloud. I'm going to give up on the clicker and stand here. So as far as providing value, what we're looking to do is plug into the Office 365 and Office ecosystems to provide value and productivity to users. So when we talk about the intelligent cloud and Dynamics AX and how it fits in, you'll see Microsoft Dynamics being talked about as an enterprise solution, building upon a number of key platform pieces, and Office 365 living beside it. And what we're looking to do is stitch those two together. So inside of AX7, we talk about a number of common user interface pieces. So the client that you'd usually be looking at is in the browser and the universal app up in the top left there. There's the mobile user interface, the point of sale interface for retail, but then also we're trying to make Office a user interface. So make Excel and Word interfaces that can show Dynamics AX data. And then you'll see down in the platform layer below the application space, what we're building on there is the OData services, and then Azure Blob Storage for communicating files to users and also for document storage. So let's talk a little bit about authentication. Authentication is one of the places where, for Office integration, we have our most challenges. It's often where our customers and partners will be talking to us about how it works and why it is working or isn't working. So what we're trying to do is leverage Azure Active Directory and single sign-on. So when it works, it's fantastic. A user will sign in. When they go to sign into Dynamics AX, they're actually signing into Azure Active Directory. And because Office 365 uses the same thing and the Office products use the same Azure Active Directory, the single sign-on completes and everything is just great. We get into some trouble when that single sign-on fails. So specifically in the Excel add-in that I'll be showing you in a little bit, it has its own sign-in context, and it signs in inside of Internet Explorer. So if you're using a different browser than Internet Explorer for the client, then you can have some trouble there. So there's just some things to be aware of as far as sign-in is concerned. The Office 365 licenses that you'll buy and the Dynamics AX licenses that you will buy are associated with a tenant. So that'll typically be some name like Contoso AX7 on Microsoft.com. So the on Microsoft.com part is consistent for many tenants, many of the production tenants. And then the first early part is your tenant name, and that is what you'll purchase your licenses into. And they will talk to each other through that tenant information. Again, yeah, using single sign-on with both Office 365 and Dynamics AX. So there's two separate authentication flows. The browser-based authentication is SAML. That's used by the Dynamics AX client. So when you sign into the client, it's using that flow. And then OAuth is a separate flow, OAuth 2.0, and that is used by Power BI and the Excel add-in and the Office add-ins that we have. So they can talk together somewhat as far as passing cookies between, but there are sometimes troubles. And as I mentioned before, in the Office add-ins, if you get in trouble with regards to authentication, signing out and signing back in is something that you have to do. You might even see me do it here during these demos. Yeah, so the browser-based authentication flow, basically you're connecting to the sign-in page with your browser, and then the browser is going to do a redirect to Azure Active Directory, and then send you back to AX7 and collect some cookies out of that. The OAuth 2 flow is a little bit different. The user authenticates and consents, and then there's an authorization token that happens there. And then the client then talks to Azure Active Directory and retrieves that access token. And then eventually the client application, being like our Excel add-ins, will talk to AX7 and back to get the data back to the user. Great. So the reason I kind of talk through that is because that's one of our big problem areas. And then authentication is how we get into being able to add security. So the Office integration components make use of role-based security, just like any other part of AX7. So you have roles like branch manager that have duties within them, that have privileges within them, that are privileges pointing at menu items and entities and things like that via permissions. So you'll see entities right down the bottom right there. So we make use of that same pyramid. Anytime that you're accessing an entity via OData, it takes advantage of this same role-based security setup. As far as what entities are, so previously in AX 2009 and 2012, we had pain points as far as multiple individual tables that users and developers had to deal with. And what we've tried to do is kind of create a layer over those being data entities. So an abstraction encapsulation of the underlying table schema, trying to simplify what the user sees so that the user can kind of see and understand those entities. And it's leveraged by a number of things within the system. The one that we're most interested in as far as Office integration is the OData service. And you can see those pieces highlighted there. So Office integrations, talking to the OData services built upon those data entities. So the entity patterns are all supported. Security is all supported. The reason I go into this is because I used to not touch on entities or security, and people would often ask, well, how does the security work? It is all the same as any of the import-export pieces that are in DIXF and the client. So you get all of the cross-company support, read-only support, security, of course, yes, keys and relations as well. So what is OData? So OData is a standards-based protocol for representing data and then having a set of URL conventions for navigating, filtering, and sorting. So it's a standards-based service that we've created on top of Dynamics AX7. The add-ins that the Excel add-in primarily that I'll show you in a little bit build on top of the OData service, but other applications can be built on top of that same service. So you can have third-party applications that also build on top of that OData service. So there's some metadata associated with it, and then you can pass some parameters to get data, and you can also call functions and things like that. So Excel. So the base where we started in AX 2009 was having static export to Excel. In AX 2012, we extended that by creating a set of add-ins built using VSTO. So they were add-ins that you had to install. And then in AX7, we have made those simpler by using a web framework, so there's no installation needed. But we'll start with export to Excel, static export to Excel. So that's still available. It's in there's an Open in Office menu in the top right. Who has used this before? Export to Excel. Okay. There is also, you can right-click on the data that you want to export, and you can retrieve all rows and marked rows. And I'll show you that in a second after I talk just a little bit about our file save as dialog. So when you ask for any export, when you ask for any action in that Open in Office menu, basically it needs to give you a file. So export to Excel, open in Excel, or export to Word. You're going to be getting a file, and you're going to get this file save as dialog that shows up and allows you to choose what you're going to do, whether it's download it to your machine or send it to OneDrive for Business or SharePoint. And it'll go to, we allow you to pick the folder within SharePoint or OneDrive that you want that to get sent to. So, yes. So you get a dialog similar to this on the right-hand side, and then you can open that after save. So before I jump into Open in Excel, I will jump over and just show you that quickly. Great. Somewhere is my mouse. Great, so I've got a data set here this is the All Customers form within Dynamics AX. So actually, I'll just jump back here to the dashboard. You would have all been familiar with the dashboard. Who has seen the AX7 dashboard before? Okay, who hasn't seen Dynamics AX7 before, I should ask? A couple of people, okay. I'll provide a little bit of general overview. So this is the dashboard. It allows you to get quickly to any workspace, and you've got the menu system here that provides all of the modules. And from here, you can click through the modules and get to the different forms. So such as this. The other way to get there is to search, and search is my preferred way because it takes you directly to the thing that you actually want. So you can put in something like All Customers and then pull up the customers form. And so the thing that we were just talking about, was this Open in Office menu here in the top right-hand corner. So if I pop that open, then I get a number of options in here. So I've got some Open in Excel options, which we'll see in a little bit. And then we've got an Export to Excel option being Customers. And it tells me the grid name is Grid. So it's pointing at this grid control right here. If I do that, that's going to take the data from the grid control as formatted in the grid control, and it's going to put that into an Excel workbook for me. So all of that data is statically in there, and then I can do whatever I want with it. If I'm interested in just getting a selection of rows, I can check those, and then I can right-click. I can check those, and then I can right-click. The trick is to right-click on the header. There we go. And then I can say export marked rows, and then again it'll prompt me, and then I can grab that. Sorry. And then I just get 4 rows. So the other thing that we talked about with regards to that file save as dialog was the idea of sending it somewhere other than just giving the file to you. So we've got this OneDrive for Business option, we've got this SharePoint option. So if I click on SharePoint, you can see I've got folders, a list of folders that I've already exported to. So you can see one that I've selected there. We've got our file name and our extension and asking us whether we want to open it after save or not. So I'll just do this one to start with. Yes, I want to replace the existing file that I did previously. So it's sending it to Export Online, to SharePoint Online, to a folder in SharePoint Online, and then opening it there. So that's great. And then if there's a different folder that you're interested in sending it to, you can do that as well. So if I click on SharePoint and then click on Browse, and then the Browse allows me to look at all of the folders that I might have in here. So I could, for example, send it just to the base of Office Integration or any other folder. When I click on that, it's going to populate that list of recent folders so that I can access it quickly next time. I don't need to pick the folder. It's just in that recently used list. And then I can say save again, and it's going to put that file out there. Right. This allows you to just easily collaborate with others by sending data out to SharePoint or OneDrive for Business, and then you can easily send them a link, share it with them, for example. Great. So that is static export to Excel. So let's switch back to the slides. And now we'll get into some more fun stuff. So we also have this process that we call open in Excel. So the reason we call it open in Excel, so export to Excel is going to give you a static export of that data. You can't do anything with it. When we say open in Excel, we mean we're going to open this data set into Excel so that you can refresh it and edit it and publish those changes back. So the open in Excel options are, like you just saw, shown in the open in Microsoft Office menu. What we do there is we look for the base table for the form, because forms are based on tables. And then we we basically make a query to all of the entities, and we say, what are the base tables for all of these entities? Because entities are also based on tables. And then we stitch those two together. So we say, hey, that form relates to sales table, and these 3 entities relate to sales table. We're going to show all of these entities as options in there. If you're a partner or a customizer and you create an entity, all you have to do is create that entity and then populate the auto lookup group to designate the set of fields that you want, and that will again show up as an open in Excel option in this menu. So the open in Excel options can be the first one that I mentioned, automatically generated for an entity that shares the same root data source. That was the one that I just talked through. You can also create a template and load that up into the docu-template form, and I'll show that a little bit later with Word specifically. And then you can also programmatically add an option using the Excel Export API. And you can create a dedicated button to kind of replace this open in Excel option as well. So there's a number of different things that you can do. But that kind of base is just all of the entities and all of the forms. We look for matches between the two, stitch those together, and provide a bunch of open in Excel options so that users can go ahead and edit the data based on their security privileges. So the Excel Data Connector add-in, usually referred to as the Excel add-in for short. It's built using an Office Web.js API. That doesn't mean a whole lot to a lot of people. The important part about that is that it's using the Office teams, the Office extensibility teams, new extensibility API. It allows us to inject a pointer to the add-in It's basically just a web application running somewhere. And so we inject a pointer to the add-in into the workbook, and it runs. You can also add it from the Office store, and I can show you that in just a minute. And it replaces the AX 2012 add-in. And the big thing that it does is that when we give you a document, it already has the add-in inside of it. You don't need to have pre-installed anything. So if you have a tablet or you've got a new machine or something like that, there's no pre-configuration that you need to do. You just get a Excel workbook and you open that and it just works. The other advantage is that it works inside of Office 365 Excel Online. So you can, even if you don't have Excel on your desktop, you can go ahead and work with data inside of Excel Online. And as I mentioned before, it leverages the OData services, and we like to think that it's simple and productive. So you can get source and field information. We'll run through that. Refresh and publish the data. It's got lookups and enum drop-downs, so you can see examples of that. You can see an example of that with regards to the top right one, the date lookup. We've got per row error messages as well, and then there's a design experience, which you can see in the bottom right-hand corner, as well as filtering. So you can filter the data that's actually coming back over the OData service, in addition to using all of Excel's fantastic capabilities to filter the data once it's in the workbook. And then you can use charts and things like that. So, yes, this is worth mentioning. We built an add-in instead of just using the standard Excel OData support because we needed to support translatable labels. We needed to factor in, we wanted to factor in security. We wanted to be able to provide source and field information, a customized design experience, lookups that are specific to Dynamics AX, as well as being able to publish that data back, get error messages, and then things like dimension support inside of journals. So there were a number of things that drove us to building an add-in rather than just using Excel's standard OData support. You can use Excel's standard OData support to get a refreshable set of data without labels and without kind of source and field information, things like that. That is certainly an option. And then as far as getting an entity ready for Excel, so I touched on this with regards to automatically stitching those forms and entities that have the same base tables, stitching those together. You define auto report field groups to define the fields that show up in the workbook, and then auto lookup field groups to define the fields that show up in lookups. So we leverage the relationships defined between two entities as exposed through the OData metadata. We expose those as lookups within the add-in, and we will see that shortly. I'll just get past that for time. We also have a workbook designer, so I'll jump into this as well. So this experience allows a user to just get a list of all of the entities and then create any workbook that they want, so any set of fields that they're interested in. You can also grab an entity record count, and handily you can jump off to the related form that you might be interested in. So I will jump into it and show you a bit, and then I'll come back to some of these slides. So back here in our customer form, great. So I did static export to Excel, so now let's do open in Excel. So you can see this open in Excel option here. It's going to be using the customer's entity. There's another option in here, which is the dim attribute cust table entity. That is not one that we want. This is the one that we want here, this customer's entity. So we'll pull that out. We could send it to Excel Online by sending it to OneDrive for Business or SharePoint, but for sake of ease, we'll just send it out to Excel Desktop. So yes, we inject a pointer to the add-in. You can see that on the right. We put binding information. You can see that on the left. And then when the add-in runs, it has a pointer to the server in it as well. So it goes and retrieves the metadata, retrieves the data, and then populates that data in here. So you can see this is a fully refreshable data set, and you can change this data as needed. So I can make a change to this data and publish that off. And eventually it will succeed or not. There we go. There we go. That's what we like to see. So we've got a message center down on the bottom right, which tells you what's going on with all of the with the Excel add-in. Once an error shows up, we'll automatically go to an errors only view, which then hides this kind of verbose, more informational information, so you can just zero straight in on the errors. But this is useful at the start when you're just getting used to it to have a look at with regards to performance and information. The fact that it took 13 seconds to publish that row, which shouldn't have happened, it should have been closer to a second. Yeah, and you can see all of the different operations that the Excel add-in is doing and who it's doing it on behalf of. So I will jump over to this one. So this is our, let me just refresh this form. So I'm just going to go to a different form and grab a different data set quickly. Do a different, open in Excel, download that, open. So like I was saying, it's a very simple process. What I have configured on Excel, which is just a tiny bit different that I should call out, is when you, by default, open content from the internet, when you download a workbook and then open it, there's an enable editing button that shows up initially. So you normally have to click that. I have that turned off just in my Excel settings. So you can configure that so that you get the workbook with the add-in opened faster. So you can see this data here. I'm going to make a change. I'm going to make another change, and hopefully this one runs faster now that I've already done a publish. Publish. Great. So that one ran nice and fast, and I can come back here and refresh that, and we can see that that email address there for Phil Spencer has changed nice and quickly. The error messaging is important, so let me show you that. With regards to those zip codes, they're meant to be numbers. If I add a bunch of junk letters in there and then publish, you can get a flavor for how the error handling works. So you can see we've got 2 errors here. We're highlighting them. This is also an improvement over AX 2012 where we couldn't get that per row highlighting working. And then down in the error messages, you can see the details about what's going on with that. So, for example, this one's saying I couldn't update this row in Fleet Customers because I couldn't convert the literal that, so something that has letters, alpha characters in there. I can't convert that into a number. So that's what those 2 error messages were. Great. Great. And then the design experience that we talked about. So you can pull in another data set. I'm going to pull in the rentals as well. This is a slightly more complex data set, and I'll pull this into the same workbook so that you can get a feel of that. So this is a list of all of the entities that are in the system, all of them, 1,000+ entities listed there, so you can go ahead and pull those. So we're interested in fleet rentals. I can just say Control A to grab any fields that I might be interested in, add those, and then say done. It's just going to confirm that you know that you need to refresh after you're done doing this, right? Yep, we're done, and then refresh. And now we've got this set of rentals. So in here we can see things like date lookups, date helpers. So you can see that one there. I can change the date if I'm interested in changing the end date. That was just adjust that by a day. And then I might be interested in changing the mileage on another row. And then you can see, you can also see we've got the idea of status values. So an enum lookup is shown here. And then also relationship lookups as shown by this one. So this rental is associated with Adrian Lannon. This is the lookup for the different customers. If I were to add a rental, then I would pick my customer, and those values would get populated. And you can see that we select the current value in the lookup so you know where you are. Great. The other thing we do, so who here is kind of US based? Yep. Who's not US based? Okay. Who speaks in another language? Who works in other languages? Okay, good. Okay, I'll show you this. So another thing that we do with regards to the client, you can run it in any language that you're interested in. So for example, I'm going to run this customer form in French. So you can see all of the labels are showing up in French, as you would expect from an international ERP system, internationally aware ERP system. And my Open in Office menu is international as well. Apparently, clients is what customers gets changed to in France, in French. And then if I do open in Excel, the Excel add-in is able to handle these languages as well, and this gets flowed through in the workbook. So you can see the labels that we initially populate are the French labels. The Excel add-in is aware that it's French, so we're using all French labels inside of the Excel add-in. Yep. And then when the labels when the data gets refreshed in there, those labels are getting refreshed with the French labels. And then we have a language picker as well. So if you're not happy with that particular language choice, if you want to switch to, let's switch to Spanish. It will go ahead and switch to Spanish. When the data refreshes, we'll also refresh the labels. So then the labels that show up the top will switch to Spanish, and then it'll pull a fresh set of data. See. Great. Great. So nice and internationally aware. The other thing, I will switch it back to English. English US. The other thing that we do with regards to working well with the client is the client has company information. So you can see here, this is set to a USMF. I'm going to switch it back to English. So the client is set to USMF as the company. So we flow that through. And what that looks like in the Excel add-in is if you go to this filter experience, I have now a USMF company filter. So you can remove that filter and get all of the customers from all of the companies. So you can do cross-company queries. We'll just open it by default in a particular company. And hopefully that is helpful to people. If I'm interested in adding a filter field, I can do that. So let me try to do that. One of those two names is the right one. Let's try this. That apparently was not the right name. Oh, I'm striking out on this data set. If I go back to my rentals, for example. So I've got my rentals. I should be able to get all of the in-progress rentals. So we'll just do a filter on that. So we've got a drop-down, which allows you to select the data source. I can add a filter field. So I can pick status equal to. We've got the lookup in here, so it's nice and easy for users to use, as well as power users. And then I can refresh. And now that data set is filtered down to just the in-progress rows. So the important thing about that is that we're querying for less rows from the OData service. So we'll only pull back 3 rows, which helps with performance. So I'll just remove that filter. So the other thing with regards to, so I've covered security, which is a common question and problem area. The other one is performance. I touched on it just then with regards to returning back less rows. The other thing that we have is we have a data governor in here. So if I go into the options area, I can change this the cell refresh limit to 10 rather than 1 million. And basically what that's going to do is it's going to say, the Excel add-in is then going to retrieve 10 cells worth of data and populate whatever it can, and then it's going to hit that data governor and stop. That data governor is in there to make sure that the Excel add-in doesn't grind to a halt, to make sure that the user experience is kept intact. But we can handle a lot of data, as denoted by the 1 million cell data limit, but that's just showing you how we control for performance to make sure that the user experience is nice and consistent. The other thing that we can do with regards to the design experience, we also have support for, you can see labels in here, so I can add unbound labels. We have the idea of being able to change the label. So I'll just remove some of the fields from here. So let's just remove the last number of fields. So we're going to remove some fields, and then we'll just say end mileage instead of end mileage. You can use the labels that are in the system, so with the @ reference, or you can hard code whatever you're interested in hard coding. So I'm just going to change that to stop mileage, and then I'm going to update that, and you can see that label changed. And all of those extra columns got removed. The other thing that we have with regards to kind of more power user capabilities is the idea of formula fields. So if I'm looking for a mileage calculator, for example, so do I have start? No. I'll just add start mileage in here. So I want to double click on that or click the add button, either way. And then I can move that up, down, start mileage, up, above or to the left of end mileage. And now I will give this a label, this formula field, mileage calculator. And I'll just update that, make sure that everything is good. Refresh that, yes. Okay, so now what I want to do is I can put in like the start mileage and then the end mileage. And what I want to be able to do is put a formula in here. So I'm going to say the mileage calculation is the stop mileage minus the start mileage. Yep, 400. Yep, that's the formula that I want. Now I can go back to this formula field in the designer. And then I can update that. And I can update that. Now I've got my mileage calculation. You can see that formula is in every cell, so that if I want to set the start and stop mileage on a couple of these, and then publish those values, you can see those values can publish back. The mileage calculation is there as a formula field. That mileage calculation, of course, doesn't go back because there isn't a corresponding field back in Dynamics AX, but this is now available in this template so that it's nice and easy to use. So in this way, you can build up like templates that have intelligence with regards to the table. Also, you can base charts off of those things as well. So back on the customer one, we will just jump to rentals. fleet rentals, and I'll show you a pre-built template just to give you a flavor of that. So we've got rentals by status here. So this is a pre-built template that's showing up inside of this list of open in Excel options. So I can download that. And this one just has a little bit more complexity built into it. So it's doing some status counts based on the data. And then there's a nice little chart that just shows what's going on. Oh. Okay. Okay. There's a problem right into the data cache, but the data came back just fine. So you can see here, it's just showing me that most of these rentals are complete, and then there's a few in progress and a few ready for pickup. So you're going to have this chart based on this data, and this data is calculated from the actual data set. And you can use pivot tables, things like that. They all work great inside of here. The one other thing actually related to that error message, that's handy that came up. The other thing that we added recently is the idea of a data cache. So every time that you refresh data, we're getting data and we're displaying it. You can see this table that's being displayed here. We're also creating a hidden sheet in the background. We're putting that same data into that hidden sheet in a data cache, so that when you're making changes to the data that you can see, when you hit publish, we do a comparison between the two and then send the changes back. We didn't have that when we first released back in February, but we've added that in since. The value of that is if I want to make changes and then close the workbook and then reopen the workbook, those changes are still there and you can go ahead and publish those changes. So we can handle people that might get interrupted by a reset or a restart or Windows updates or something like that, or they just forgot to hit publish, or they're on a plane and they're working away and they lose Wi-Fi coverage or something like that. Great. The other change that while I'm on a roll talking about recent changes, so the other thing that we did with regards to showing the user about the authentication, remember I mentioned that authentication is sometimes an issue as far as getting the right user. We put the user visible up the top near where they're working. It used to be down the bottom and hidden under a menu that you had to open. We wanted to make sure that that was nice and visible, like the user for the Excel session was visible. For example, at Microsoft, we have a policy where in Internet Explorer, it'll just automatically sign me in using my corporate credentials. It'll just like push my Windows login into Internet Explorer. So I often have it where I'm trying to demo using my demo user, and it'll try and log me in as my Microsoft user. So this makes that nice and visible, and then you can just sign out and sign back in as needed. Great. Great. So I think we really talked about the Excel add-in quite a bit. Great, so we touched on the design time as well while we were in there. Fields, unbound labels, yes, yes. Formula columns, yes, yep, and adjusting field labels. Yeah, the other thing to mention is providing indicators. So you'll see there next to the vehicle rental ID, it's got a little key icon which tells you that it's a key. And then next to the first and last name, those little stars are showing you that those are required or mandatory fields. Those show up both in the design experience as well as in the user experience in that top right where that table and field are showing. You just hover over those and those are available. So that base Open in Excel experience is available on lots of forms just by looking at the 1,000+ entities that we have, and we stitch those together with the forms and provide those as options. The other thing that a number of teams have done is they've gone in and they've provided special experiences. So the budget planning or the budgeting team has provided a budget planning experience that makes use of the Excel add-in. So they've got a bunch of templates that are pre-built. Yes, a bunch of templates that are pre-built and can be generated, and those allow you to do budget planning in Excel. Our financials team as well has built some templates around journal entry in Excel. So we can touch on that briefly here. So there's an Open Lines in Excel button that is available on some of those forms that somewhat replaces the standard Open in Office button. So they can choose whether they want to work on those journal entries, doing journal entry in the client or in Excel. So the Excel templates that are available for the different journal types, you can see those templates listed down the left there, and then the account types that are supported on them. The one interesting thing is that the financials team looked at the entities, and they chose not to build one entity that supports all of the journal types. So you kind of have to use the correct template and the correct entity depending on what types you're interested in. So all of this is available on the AX documentation wiki. This table is, so you can look that up. And certainly as you're clicking around the user experience, this is easy enough to find. So the one that we're going to be using is just that top one, the ledger to ledger, and just accessing that via the general journal. I'll show you a quick example of that. The other thing that they have is they've got entities in data management for opening balances. So these allow you to set the opening balances, import those to get the system up and running using data management on DAXF. So you can see those different types there. So general ledger, bank, and accounts receivable, accounts payable, and fixed assets are fairly easy to identify and find. The one gap is project, which I believe might have been filled actually by now, but at the last time I looked, it wasn't there. So let's go and have a look at journal entry in Excel. So this should work. Otherwise, I have some backup screenshots. All customers. So yes, let's go back to the dashboard, and I'll show you how to find this rather than just jumping directly to it. So back on the dashboard, again, using the search because it's super fast and efficient. I can look through here. I've got general journal in here as the search term, and then I've got a number of different options. The one that I'm particularly interested in is general journal. So general ledger, journal entries. So I'm going to jump into that form, and then we can see two journals that are in here. If I go into one of those, you can see the idea of like these are the headers, and then you click on one of those journals and you get through to the lines. Wi-Fi, I'm blaming the Wi-Fi. You can get through to the lines, so they have the idea of two different forms where you're doing those two different things. So you can see the lines there, and now you're away. But back on the header form, they have this Open Lines in Excel button, which I was telling you about, which has a drop-down which lists off the different templates that are available to work with these journals. So depending on the type of journal entry you're looking to do, you can pick a different template. So what I will do, okay, and it nicely tells you when it's not the one that you want. What I meant was cancel, and I hit OK. So I'm going to create a new journal. We'll just create a general journal for Chris. Great. Now, what I'll do is I'll just jump in here and I'll add one line so you can see the client experience for adding lines. And then I will add a line, a similar line inside of Excel so you get an experience there. So as far as account is concerned, I'm just going to pick any old account. So I've got this idea of I've got a nice kind of simple experience for selecting the different segments in my, as far as my dimensions is concerned. So I picked the main account, now I'm picking the business unit, then I can pick the department, and then I can enter in the value. Was there another segment there? No, that was the last one, good. So now I've got this line, and that is saved, and we're good to go. So that's the client experience. It's a very simple experience. So new users will often want to be in here using this drop-down to help them select the different segments and dimensions. Power users just go ahead and enter in the dimensions to the point where a lot of them have like a piece of paper that just has like the codes available right next to their screen, and then they type those in. So you've got the idea of a kind of basic user will use the lookup experience. A more power user might just type in the code straight away. And then kind of targeted at that power user, there's also this open lines in Excel experience. So let's try going in here and see what that looks like. So this is equivalent to using that open in Office button. Well, it would be if it worked. Let me just refresh the form. General journal for Chris. Open lines in Excel. Yes. Pick the ledger journal line entry template and then click OK. There we go. Save that and open it in desktop Excel. You can see again, so there's a pre-built template, so it has some shape, it has some binding information, it has a pointer to the server, as well as the Excel add-in sitting in here inside of it. I've got, again, the single sign-on, so the Excel add-in is running here, and then it refreshes the data, and it should pull back our journal header information. Great, and one line. That is exactly what we wanted to see. So we've got the idea of a date lookup provided here. And then we've got the main account listed in here as well. If you do have more segments, you need to add those into the template. So that's an extra step that you have to do. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, for the sake of showing you kind of the power user experience here, I'm going to add more. So I'll just paste one in there, copy two, paste down. So I'll just try and add a bunch of lines. Cross my fingers a little bit. So you've got the idea of a power user being able to add a bunch of lines that are very similar. Maybe they've got different debit amounts and credit amounts. Maybe they've got slightly changed main accounts. But being able to add in a number of lines quickly is really the key thing that they'll want to be able to go into Excel and do. So you can see there it added those 13 lines, and using this message center that I showed you before, it managed to publish those in 10 seconds, which is pretty good. What it's doing there is it's using the security to make sure that you can publish. It's also going to be validating the main account information, so the dimension information that you have in here. It's validating that that is a valid dimension combination and making sure that you can publish. So that's a nice experience there. The one thing to note, so it's got a company lookup, but the one thing to note is that we don't currently have a lookup experience for the main accounts. So the way that the dimensions get added is kind of special. Then they aren't, dimensions are added as data rather than, dimensions are added as data rather than kind of being hard-coded. So you need to configure those dimensions in, and they get added as extensions to entities, and then they show up in OData in a slightly special way. So we don't have a lookup experience for this right now. So right now, this is more of a power user experience for users that know the codes and can enter those, or can kind of refer back to the client to remind themselves of what some of the codes might be. So that is our journal entry experience. I'll jump back in here. Great, time check, good. So that's journal entry in Excel. That is what we just saw. So yeah, key improvements still coming, dimension lookups, and also the dimension descriptions. So right now, it is a bit more of a power user experience, but yes, power users love it. The feedback that we've gotten from people is that it's pretty fantastic. So Word, let's talk about Word. So the base add-in that we have for Excel, we also can run that inside of Word, or we can take advantage of a lot of those same capabilities in Word. So we have a Word add-in that facilitates template design that allows you to add fields and tables in much the same way. You can make field label adjustments as needed, and then that allows you to create the templates. You load those up into the system, and then you'll do, the user will have export to Word options. They can click on those, and we use OpenXML to generate those documents from the pre-built template. And I will show you that in just a second after I talk about the document templates briefly. So the document templates, so this was another key area that we improved from AX 2012, was adding the idea of document templates and a place to store and manage those document templates. So we've got a document templates form. There are system templates that are loaded during deployment, and you can reload those at any time, but developers can add predefined templates as well. So if you're a partner, you can create templates, you can create little ad hoc reports in Word and add those in there so that your customers have access to those. And then you can share those between organizations as long as the entities are the same, so you can swap those around between different customers. Power users can also load additional templates into the system to share with colleagues, so the templates that get loaded are available to everyone. And then there's a DocuTemplate API that's very similar to the Excel Export API. And that allows you to retrieve those templates and add additional options inside of that Open in Office menu. So let's go have a look at that quickly. So let's start here. So the template experience, the template designer experience that I talked about, actually let me start with creating a new document. So if I create a new document, I'm creating a new template. I can say blank document, then I can insert from the store the Word add-in that we have created. So all you have to do to find it in the store is type in Dynamics, and it's showing up down the bottom there because I use it all the time and Office is so smart, but I'm going to type Dynamics anyway. So you can see here the Microsoft Dynamics Office add-in, so you can add that one. And it'll add in here, and then it'll say, I want server information. So we're going to click on that, and we're going to go back and grab our URL, and then we'll just take it down to the host information. So we've just got the base server information. Say OK, yes, reload. It's going to grab the metadata, and then it's going to make that available to me. So the template design experience is you can use any of the standard Word capabilities that you're interested in. And then you also have the designer here. So if I click on design, it's going to retrieve the entity names. And then I can say add fields. If I want just a single sales order in here, I want to add fields rather than a table of sales orders. So I can go ahead and type ahead here, go and find my sales order headers. And then I can add something like sales order number. So you've got a very similar design experience to what we had in Excel. This is the fields one here. So rather than having a set of available fields and selected fields, we've got the idea of available fields and then bound fields. So I can select that one that I'm interested in, select the place that I want it, and then say add value. Great, so that added in there. And then I can put just a spacer, and then I'm interested in adding sales order name. Let's do that. Great. And then if we just go down, I can format that. So let me format that using my heading formatting, and then we can grab other things that we might be interested in. So like requested shipping date. I can add a label for that, go to the end of that, add a spacer and add the value. And then if I'm interested in some other values, so what is another one we are interested in? Like payment terms. So payment terms, I've got my label, and then my value. Great. So then I can save that. I can save that to documents, and we'll just put it to demo attachments, and we'll say this is sales order. Oh, wait, not demo attachments. Back up. Demo templates, sales order, simple with ship date. So I'll save that in here. So now I've saved my template. Now I can close that. And then I can go to the document template form that I talked about. So let's just use this window. So document templates. First option that comes up. And then so all of the system-defined templates are all listed here. So you can see those all listed. They're looking great. There are a number of them. At last count, there was close to 50. And then I can add in new ones. So I'm going to add new. I'm going to browse. So you note that I'm not doing anything that a power user couldn't do. Sales order simple with ship date. There's no code that I'm having to write or kind of more developer-focused things that I'm doing. I can change this template name. Sales order demo with date. Now I've added that template, and now I can just go to another tab. Yep, let's use this tab. So I'll just refresh. And so that template was targeting the sales order entity. So I know that the sales order entity is used on the sales order form. So let me go to all sales orders, all sales orders. And we'll just jump straight to that. Great. Sales and marketing sales orders, all sales orders. So now up in the Open in Office menu, you can see sales order demo with date is listed here. It's added immediately, so I can see it right away. I can then click on download. So what that has done is it's used OpenXML to grab the data that I have selected, so this order 772. Just cross our fingers again. Oh, that didn't work. Okay. Apparently I did something wrong. I'll show you another one that I had before. So 772, sales order ship info. I promise that was working right before I came in here. Let me just try this one more time. Let me just click through and make sure that these orders are good. Okay, great. One more time. No? Okay, we're going to go over to this other one. So we're just going to go to the fleet customers. We've got a pre-built templates just so that you can see an example of that. So you can see the idea of that is showing up right away. So there's actually, I'm going to have to research that after, once I get back to Fargo, back into the office, and find out why sales orders is misbehaving. Fleet customer. So this is one of the demo templates that we have in the system. So you can go in here, and I can see under Export to Word, I've got this customer information. So now I'm going to click on this, Hopefully it's not a system-wide issue. Hopefully I just did something wrong with the template. There we go. So it grabbed the customer information that I had selected and populated these header fields. The other thing that this one has in it is it has the idea of adding related. So it's got an add related for the rentals for this customer. So it's showing you some basic customer information and then showing you some rental information as well. And then the other cool thing about this is that you can throw it to SharePoint and so that then you can share it with people really easily. And there's our Word document that's been generated, pushed to SharePoint, and now we can see that there. And the design time experience for building a template that's more complex is pretty simple. It's just a matter of doing an add related, which looks a little bit like this. So when you add sales order header, you've got the idea of like an add related table, and then it shows up as a related table underneath the one that it's related to. And then so you can add header fields and then a table of related lines. Great. Let's jump back here. So Excel Word document management is another heavy hitter, a very important feature. So document management allows you to attach documents. There is an attachments form that we have that has an attachments preview, so you can see an example of that. You can store an Azure Blob or SharePoint, and let's go ahead and have a quick look at that. Great, so in our fleet customers form, I can hit the attach button, and then I have no attachments right now, but I can say new file, and then browse to find an attachment that looks interesting. In fact, the red car that's actually in the presentation. So then you can see the preview experience that we've got there. So for images as well as Word documents and Excel documents, so Office documents. So I can add a resume. And the preview should show up as long as it's behaving. Yes, okay, good. Something is working good for me. So the preview in here will show up for that Word document, and then you can scroll through that and have a look at that if you're interested. And then you can open those. So this is the idea of it's going to give that file to you via the browser. So that is document management. You can also use do a setup for SharePoint. Document management parameters. So in the document management parameters form, there's the ability to set up SharePoint as a document storage location. Sorry. So document management parameters is where you go and test to make sure that your SharePoint connection is working, which it is. And then you can go to document types to go ahead and set up your different document types. And under File right now, this location is set up as Azure Storage, but you can quite easily set this to SharePoint, for example. And then once you set SharePoint, then you've got the idea of selecting a folder. You'll notice that this folder selection experience is very similar to that File Save As experience that we saw before. So you can set a folder that those documents are going to get placed in. So you'll create different document types for like HR docs or executive docs or just general storage of those documents. Great. So we touched on that. There's also a document management API that allows you to work with attachments in a programmatic way, but this is not the audience for that. there is a SysMailer email framework. So the email framework, we recently added the ability to connect directly to Exchange Online. So previously, the user could either get an email file, so they could send via Outlook, or use SMTP. But we added Exchange Online recently, so that is nice because it requires no special setup. And then you'll see when a user goes to send an email, so for example, from collections, they can send statements to contact, and they get a nice dialogue that prompts them about which different email option they want to use. And you'll see the checkbox just at the bottom of that dialogue there, which allows them to set their default, and then they can change those defaults at any point in the options form. You can see the user options, email provider selection shown there. So as far as things that we've recently completed, I'll just touch on these briefly, and then we'll see if you have any questions that you want to ask. So Skype for Business Presence is something that we added. A feed control we added to support showing Yammer feeds, LinkedIn content, and Twitter widgets. We also added word support for unbound labels. So these have all been added in the last 6 months, or 6 to 8 months since RTW. The capability to get a blank document with the word added and inserted, so we made that a little bit easier. And then we just recently have completed an attachments-based entity to be able to move attachments from AX 2009 to AX7 as part of our push to create an upgrade path for AX7 from AX 2009. And then, as I mentioned, we have the Exchange Online provider. So the Skype for Business Presence, I will just quickly try and show that. It can be a touch fickle, so if it doesn't work, so if I go back to Fleet Customer, you can see my email address is in there next to this user. So the disclaimers for this would be that we only show the presence in the view mode. So we can't show it in the grid for performance reasons and because of the way that the grid control was built. We're going to work on that in the future. And that is not showing up correctly. Let me jump over here and refresh. Refresh. So the fact that I am one user and I am demoing with another user, sometimes there are problems with regards to authentication, which I've mentioned a couple of times. The workaround that I'm using here is opening up Dynamics AX in an Edge in private session, and that allows Edge to work properly, hopefully. So you can see the presence is trying to show up here. No, it doesn't seem to want to show. Okay, no. Let me try signing in. As that user. So we have a sign-in that shows there in the hover. What I was looking for there was a contact card. No, it's not. Okay, I'll show you some screenshots of that, which works fine in kind of customer environments. It's just a problem with me and the many accounts that I have going on here. Something that I will show you here is also that I mentioned was the support for external feeds. So the support for Yammer and Twitter and LinkedIn. So here's examples of LinkedIn. So you can, a developer, a partner can add a control to a form now. So for example, in the sales order workspace, if you are kind of Delta Airlines and you're interested in what the customer sentiment is about Delta Airlines, you can go ahead and add a Twitter feed inside of your, there it is, that one. You can add a Twitter feed inside of your sales order processing workspace. And you do that just by setting the hosting form information to the sales table, the form name, and then use the control name to target the specific feed control that you've added in there. The configuration of these is really easy. you can just say parse feed URL and then paste the URL in here, and it'll populate everything, including the feed type. You can see the different feed types listed here. So a number of different Yammer types, LinkedIn types, and then the idea of the Twitter widget. So Twitter kind of covers it all inside of one widget. So you saw LinkedIn just then. These are the Twitter equivalents, and then Yammer feeds. Takes a little bit longer to load. This is another problematic one because it's Yammer as cgardy@microsoft.com, but I am logged into this system as administrator at contosoax7.onmicrosoft.com. So it does some juggling. So it might show up. Give it 2 seconds. 1, 2. No, it's too late. So the LinkedIn feeds also show inside of here, and I will jump back to the slides where I have the backups for showing you. So this is the Skype information, the Skype presence information, and then you can see the contact cards, example of the contact cards for available and busy shown there. And then if you want to start an IM conversation, you just click on that IM button, which is the one on the right, and it'll use your Skype application to go ahead and talk to those other users. And then the external feeds, so you'll see an example of Yammer in the bottom left there, and I showed the rest there. So a number of good options there. So as far as future plans, one thing to mention about the feed control is what we want to do there is make it so that a user can add those feeds via a gallery. So just like with Power BI, you can add and remove items into the workspace. You can add and remove Power BI items into the workspace. We want to provide that as well for the feed control. And then there's a number of other items that we're working on. I've mentioned a number of these. So the Excel ones, the dimension lookups and descriptions is something that we are going to work on. And then just improving the document management experience. And then a couple of these others are a little bit further away. One of the key ones is Skype, being able to do Skype, so Skype calls and Skype IMs. We want to be able to do that inside of the browser. We're just waiting on the Skype team to provide us that support via the Skype Web SDK. So that is it. So feedback and questions. If you have questions you want to send me, I'm just chris.gardy, so party with a G, @microsoft.com. And then you can add comments to the documentation wiki. If you have questions or you want to see additional documentation, you can do it there. And then you can always create Microsoft Connect items as well. And I'll be up here for questions. It's a small group, so you can probably just come up here and ask questions afterwards. 2 more slides. IT Pro resources and places to go, which you would have seen a lot. And then just, if you can evaluate this session, that would be fantastic. All right. Thank you.